Horror and video games are truly a match made in heaven, or hell, depending on your perspective.
What the?
Playing a horror game is simply a different experience than watching a horror movie. Video games give us the power to act as a character rather than just watching the actions taken by someone else, forcing the player to actively deal with the situation. As time has progressed, horror games have taken full advantage of this. Games like Outlast, Amnesia, and Resident Evil 7 and many others do a fantastic job at creating a terrifying environment with unexpected threats at every corner. But they had to start somewhere. Before the boom of Silent Hill and Resident Evil solidified the survival horror genre, there were games pioneering what it takes to truly make a scary and unsettling experience in a video game. Many of these games never left Japan due to their controversial nature at the time of their release. So, let's take a look at some of these games that never left Japan and pioneered the horror games we know and love today. Now, action horror was the most popular way to experience the things that go bump in the night in video game form. Titles like Castlevania, Contra, and even Super Metroid all had detailed sprites of big bad guys that could certainly give a kid a nightmare or two. But one action horror game never made it stateside, translated to King of Demons. Now, I never played this one before, so let's take a look here. Alright, seems relatively harmless. This is just the first level here. Let's go over here and... Whoa, wait, what? What? Holy smokes! Who? Wow! It's hard to believe that this is an SNES game. They really went all out for this one, and it easily has some of the most adult-themed images I have ever seen in a Super Nintendo platformer. And it plays pretty great too, and I actually had a lot of fun with this one and would recommend it to any fan of action platformers. Each level has your character transformed to different forms with their own abilities and movement options. It's a tough one, but it's a lot of fun. It's easy to see why this one didn't make it stateside. I mean, 2 years before this game came out, we were having court hearings over this. There's no way this would have made it over. But it makes for a fascinating title to look at and play today, and doesn't need to be translated to be enjoyed. While action horror was way more prominent at this time, other games were experimenting with what we would know today as the survival horror genre. One of these titles is Clock Tower, released for the SNES in Japan in 1995. Clock Tower is a point-and-click adventure game with a heavy dose of atmospheric horror. You play as Jennifer, an orphan who was just adopted with several other orphan children, and upon arrival at their new home, things go wrong pretty much immediately. And Jennifer is left to her own devices to solve puzzles and avoid enemies without the ability to attack on her own. This was a completely new concept at the time, with several developers voicing their concerns during development that this would not work. However, upon release, the game was well received and sold fairly well. Now, the game is short, but contains 8 different endings, adding some nice replay value. And honestly, when I was playing this game for footage, I played it a lot longer than I thought I would. The atmosphere this game creates still carries over to this day, and I was quite impressed with the game's visuals for the time and its dark imagery that was rarely used at that time. I just wish Jennifer would get a little more hop in her step. She's so slow. Move! There's a crazy murdery shearman coming after you. The last game we're going to look at is a Famicom title called Sweet Home, released in 1989. Sweet Home is based on a Japanese movie of the same name and is often credited as laying the groundwork for the survival horror genre. In fact, even at the time, the game was considered to be better than the movie it was based on, even expanding on story elements and ideas not present in the film, an unprecedented thing for a game to do at the time. The top-down RPG stars 5 characters, all a part of a film crew sent to investigate a mansion for lost paintings. But upon arriving, the party gets trapped and they have to find their way out by working together. They can be controlled individually or can be grouped together. Each character has special abilities that can be used on the environment to help solve puzzles or be used in battles, which play out in a similar fashion to games like Dragon Quest and Mother. The game was praised for its haunting imagery, which has truly stood the test of time. Sweet Home introduced many aspects that would end up defining the survival horror genre, such as limited items and inventory management, scattered diary entries to advance the story, and QuickTime events. The enemy sprite design is some of the best on the NES as well, with each enemy having its own chilling personality. Along with brutal looking death scenes, it's no wonder this game never made it to the West. Sweet Home was published by Capcom, the same company that would go on to develop Resident Evil a few years later. In fact, Resident Evil was originally going to be a remake of Sweet Home. The only reason it wasn't was because Capcom's license expired for the Sweet Home franchise. The games contain many similarities, such as both taking place in a mansion with a heavy emphasis on survival with limited items, multiple endings, and even the same door loading sequences. Similarities don't stop at the original Resident Evil, though. It inspired Resident Evil Zero's ability to switch to another character in an instant, and its QuickTime events were a precursor to their use in Resident Evil 4. Needless to say, without Sweet Home, we likely wouldn't have the same Resident Evil franchise that we do today. That's all for me, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Most of the games I mentioned do have fan translations available, so I'll go do some Googling and play these influential games for yourself, because we didn't get a chance to do it officially here. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.